The relationship capital, I have the most amazing guest. Ken Walls, I thank you so much for connecting me to Paul Hutchinson. Paul Hutchinson, welcome to the Cynthia Manion Show. Paul is a renowned helper of all children, people in the world. And he is a beacon of goodness, of help, of love, of bringing families back together, of helping those who got started on the wrong path in the first place. He's a beacon of hope for countless lives, and through his heroic efforts, Paul has personally led over 70 undercover rescue missions across 15 countries. I don't know about if you've seen his movie yet, The Sound of Freedom. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it right after this or see it again. It's a groundbreaking movie that highlights the critical issue. Paul's mission is to eradicate human trafficking, children, and to the innocence of our children, educating, helping with people that had trauma, empowering families. It's an honor to have him, and we're going to start with a little prayer led by Mr. Paul Hutchinson. Thank you so much for being here. You're amazing.
Oh, I'm incredibly grateful.
You've so everyone close your eyes and take a moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Our most gracious Creator, God. We are grateful for the opportunity to connect with people around the world through technology. Grateful for Cynthia and her beautiful heart. Grateful for all of the people that have brought this together. Grateful for the opportunity to serve. God, we are incredibly blessed to have the opportunity to share from our hearts and our experiences, and we ask a blessing over this next hour, that your light will shine through our hearts to the people who are listening and enlighten them, help them find ways to keep their family safe, to find liberation in their own lives from anything that is holding them back. We ask for these blessings and we extend this gratitude in the name of Yeshua Christ, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Perfect. So Paul, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Can you start by sharing a little bit about your journey and what first inspired you to take on the mission to eradicate child trafficking?
Well, that's a long answer, but I'll go quick. I have early on in my career, I had a mentor that suggested that I donate to charity even when I was just broke. I mean, just starting out, and not just. He said the average person donates 2% to make a difference in the world. That only 2% to charity. He said, if you make a decision today that for the rest of your life that number is at least 10% or higher. Now, for you who were familiar with the Bible, the Old Testament, in Malachi, there's a promise that's a very specific one. It says, "Prove me now herewith if I will not open you the windows of heaven, that there will not be room enough to receive it." Now, what is this promise tied to? It's tied to what they call the tithe. It is donating 10% of your money, and I would say 10% of your time, to making a positive impact in the world around you. Not just donating some money to your church, but finding something that you can get behind, that you can physically be there and making a difference in this world. And he said, you can call it karma, you can call it God, you can call it, a universal law of exchange. You call it whatever you want to. There's a higher power very interested in us doing good. And your success will be so much easier to attain if you have that alignment. And so, back then I was earning $2,000 a month, and, donating, 20% of that, 10% of that, that was a big deal. And I told him this. I said, Matt, that's why I wanted to be successful. I want to be wealthy so that I can be charitable. And he said, no, you should be charitable so that you can be wealthy. And it changed everything for me. I realized that okay, I'm actually showing God I am a good steward of what I have. And I tell people this: how does somebody become a partner, let alone a co-founder of a 20, 30, 40 billion dollar investment fund? You're not a University of Utah dropout, right? That's my background. That's my credibility, right? You're not a University of Utah dropout. The only way, I mean, you go to Harvard, you get a JD MBA, you work really hard, you go to New York, you start at the bottom, and maybe 20 years from now, you end up being a partner at a company like this. The only way that the statistical probability of me being where I am is zero. The only way that I can understand it is that I made that decision to give back until it hurt and making a positive impact in the lives of others. So fast forward, I had decided I wanted to focus my charitable efforts on children. I was on countless different either board of directors or at different galas and whatnot to help with child-related charities. I was on the Make-A-Wish board of directors for 7 years. And I was the incoming chairman for Make-A-Wish in our region when I got a phone call from our attorney general that would change my life. And that phone call, he said, Paul, he said, I know you've donated a lot of money to child-related charities. He said, there's something I need to talk to you about that's pretty dark. It's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, and good people don't even know that it's happening. And he started talking about human trafficking, and in particular, child trafficking. And I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear that. I mean, that was dark. He would sell a child, especially for some of the things that they were selling them for. And he told me about a guy who was in Colombia that had identified some kids and needed some money to help rescue them. And so I helped to make that happen. And then a few weeks later, that guy called me and he said, Paul, I'm here in Cartagena. There's not just 20 children. There's more than 50 here. There's more than 100 children in the surrounding areas. He said, in other cities, he said, we could rescue all these kids at the same time, but I need your help. And I said, well, how much do you need? He goes, well, I need you. Can you be in Colombia in 2 days? He said, the head trafficker has a piece of property he wants to develop into a child brothel sex resort. He needs about $8 million to build it out. He believes he could make tens of millions of dollars a year selling children to wealthy Americans. He said, and the plan is this: you fly down here, you tell him, listen, I'll fund your resort you're going to build under one condition. You have to prove to me that you have the inventory. We're going to have a party. I'm going to bring all my rich friends down. If I'm happy with what you provide, then I'll look at funding your project. Our intel told us that he already had control of over 50 children in that area through him and some other traffickers. And so indeed, I flew down there and I won't go through all of the details, but I will say this: the thing that changed my life forever was sitting in a chair. I'm this tall. I'm like I'm sitting right now. And they paraded all of these children in, 54 children in this beach house thing that we had in Cartagena. And one of the traffickers brought 4 of them out to present to me, the jefe, the boss. These 4 were virgins. There was 3 little girls and 1 little boy. And they had given this little 11-year-old boy cocaine that morning because he was so scared. I mean, what kind of monster thinks that that's attractive? And I'm sitting in this chair, and this little girl they brought out, the girl that they highlighted in the movie Sound of Freedom, they called Rocio in there. She was actually there in real life. He had shown me a picture of her on his phone, and then that's what changed my life too. That was the first time I saw a trafficked child on his phone, and then he brought her and these other kids, and she's standing there in front of me, and I'm looking eye level at her. Maybe she was a little bit taller as she was standing up. And all I could see was fear. And I made a commitment at that moment to myself, to God, to that child, that I would dedicate my life to eradicating that evil from the face of the earth. So then the most beautiful moment for me was after the agents came and stormed the party and arrested everybody, and the Child Protective Services people came in with the children, and they were calming them down. They were laughing and singing with the children, and that sound of freedom was the most beautiful sound that I ever heard. And I started crying, and I turned to the guys. I said, I want to help. What can I do? You know, at the time I was at the top. I mean, I had an incredible multi-billion-dollar company. I had, you know, nice cars, nice house, nice everything. But I knew that I needed to eradicate that evil. I knew I needed to play a part in whatever way possible to make that happen. And so fast forward, I was asked to continue that role as the wealthy buyer for a year, and then started going undercover, deep cover, 2 a.m. in downtown Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and Mexico City and other areas, connecting directly with these traffickers. And I saw the worst that humanity has to offer. One was in Haiti. There was this little girl that we had worked our way up to a level 3 trafficker, and this was a dark, dangerous area of town. This red door is about 4 feet wide and about 7 feet tall, and this trafficker sticks a key in this steel door. And as it opens, I could see multiple cell doors down this hallway. No windows, just small doors on each one of them. Sticks a key in one of those. And there was a little girl who had been taken 7 years before. Her parents were killed in the earthquake. She was 7 years old when the earthquake happened. And she was sold every single day to strangers for sex for 7 years. And she was sitting there in this square room. It's about 6 feet deep and about 5 feet wide with a dirt floor, with this blank look in her eyes, like this happens every day. And that little girl didn't speak for 2 weeks after she was rescued. And her first words that she said were, "I didn't think anybody would come." Because she gave up hope 7 years before. Now, this is heavy, guys. I know this is super heavy. And there's a beautiful light at the end of the tunnel. Through our foundation, the Child Liberation Foundation, and other foundations that I have been a part of, that I have helped to fund, over 7,000 victims are now back with their families. But that doesn't even hold a candle to how big the problem is. There are millions of children, over 10 million children, that are being trafficked today. And the movie, The Sound of Freedom, has created a global impact. I'm the primary investor and executive producer in the movie Sound of Freedom, and over 70 million people have seen that film. And so hundreds of millions of children are safer now because of that awareness. But people leave that film and they're like, okay, what do I do? I want to go do something. I want to help, Well, the worst thing you can do is go to Mexico and try to rescue kids. You're probably going to get shot, right? You're going to get arrested. But we can talk about what we can do. I don't want to just I want to let you kind of lead the discussion here. I just wanted to answer the question in that story of how I got involved and how that changed my life, and then what we've been doing ever since.
I don't know if we want to go right into what to do or like go back into how you got there. You had great success as an entrepreneur. What was your business background to prepare you for doing your work today?
Well, it wasn't just business background. I will say this. I've done a lot of training through the years. I've always believed I'd be in a war, and I've trained, in handgun training and edged weapons training and situational awareness training and Krav Maga and a lot of different things that in my book, The Sound of Freedom, that's coming out soon. The first section, the first 4 chapters are all about the making of undercover operators. And I teach families some very clear things that they can do to keep their kids safe. Some tools, some situational awareness things, all of these things you can go pre-order the book right now. And you can go to thesoundoffreedom.com, which will take you right into Liberating Humanity, and you can order it there. But the key there is that a lot of the training that we did to prepare ourselves for those undercover missions are things that parents can use to keep their children safe as well.
And I know you all want to go to that website and know that for sure. Eric, will you put that up, please? Website.
Yeah, you can go to Liberating Humanity, or you can go to The Sound of Freedom if you want something easy to remember. But Liberating Humanity, right there, liberatinghumanity.com. You can one of my trainers right up front, you'll be able to see Steve Tarani. Steve is phenomenal. He's trained Secret Service, the FBI, CIA he's one of the best edged weapons and improvised weapons trainers in the country. But more than that, his real specialty is in situational awareness. And so that's, you can get a lot of his stuff there. And then going into the book, you can get some more information there as well.
When was the moment that you decided to personally step out of the fight against trafficking and lead the undercover rescue missions? Like that was just one phone call and that was it.
Well, yeah, that was, I was still running my company at the time. And, there was old Paul and new Paul. And we'll talk later in this podcast about what my personal transition was from old Paul to new Paul, from what I used to call Paul Hutchinson, to where I am today. Because at the time that I got that call from the Attorney General, I was living high. My at one time I had a house that had 10 bathrooms.
Glad I didn't have to clean them.
7 fireplaces, 3 kitchens, 8 private suites, a basketball court in my basement. Right. This was, in fact, when I did that podcast with Ken Wall, he had me take him around the house and show, I still was living there at the time. And that's okay, guys. It's okay to have a successful life. I tell people that the Good Samaritan wasn't broke. It helps if you work hard and create a nice lifestyle so that you can make a powerful impact. Investing in a movie, a lot of money in a movie was not something that I could have done 20 years ago. I had to have built something successful so that we could make that global impact with the Sound of Freedom. And so I was still building my fund, I was still growing it, but it got to a point where the charity work was so much more fulfilling than just raising more money from some real estate investors in another multifamily project. Not putting that down. I have a fantastic team. I had over 4,000 employees in the company that John and I started at the time that I retired. And you can get this from talking to anybody of significant wealth. You could be just as miserable with $1 billion in your bank account as you can with 0, and some of them even more miserable. And there is so much more to life than just things and money. Since we started with a prayer, I know that you have a religious audience here, and I'll say this is important. There's a scripture that says that it's harder for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into heaven. Now, a lot of people are like, well, that just means you can't go to heaven if you're rich, because there's no way in Haiti that a camel is going to get through that little teeny eye of a needle. Well, here's a little history lesson for you. around the outside of a lot of the cities near Jerusalem, there were doorways that would make it so that a big army couldn't just rush into the city, but you could easily walk in and out of the city in these bricked around doorways. Those doorways were called the eye of the needle, right? Now, how does a camel get through the eye of a needle? Well, number one, he has to unburden himself from the things of this world, right? So you've got to take all of the stuff that you've packed on the back of your camel and take it off. And then that camel needs to go down on its knees so that it can scoot through the height of a man in that eye of a needle. Okay. There's the lesson right now. You can have all the wealth in the world, but you can't be attached to it. You unburden yourself from the things of this world, and a man never stands taller than when he's on his knees. That's really what that parable is all about. And so, yes, it's okay. It's okay to have this beautiful lifestyle. It's okay to have a helicopter if that's what you want, right?
Or two, right?
Or two. I don't know why. Do you know I had 2 helicopters at one time, and one of them I never ever flew in. Not once. I didn't own it outright. I owned part of it with a guy. He said, "This thing's so cool. It's this military thing, can do all this stuff." I'm like, "Oh, cool, man." I sent him some money. I've never even seen it in real life. So
you had a higher calling. Look what you're doing. Look, you're teaching parables now, and I know we all love it. Eric gives speeches every day in the morning about parables, and he's probably loving this. Shout out to Eric and Patricia and Claudia and Jennifer and Susie. Thanks for joining us. And wasn't that a great story? Have you ever had it explained to you like that before? I don't think so.
A lot of people have it. They just are, they're afraid of money. They're like, "Oh yeah, I don't want to be rich. Money is the root of all evil." Is it? No. The love of money is the root of all evil. No. Yeah, they forget the love of when they're quoting that scripture, right? It's all about attachment. It's all about releasing your attachment to the things of this world and tuning into what really matters. And so that's an important part of the principle as well, because the old Paul, the one that was first brought into the child trafficking, be totally honest with you. Here's the challenges. That first mission, when I showed up, I thought that child traffickers would have, 3 earrings in their noses and tattoos around their necks. And I've realized that there's some really good people with tattoos on their necks, right? And there's some really bad people that are all clean cut, right? And the first trafficker I met was a businessman, clean shaven, with well-dressed, well-spoken. The second trafficker I met was a beautiful woman that was running a fake modeling agency. And at first I thought, they're not traffickers. These guys aren't thugs on the street. That's what I thought traffickers were. But as soon as we sat down and started talking about their hideous plans to build out this resort and make all this money from Americans and what they're already doing with these children, I realized, they are evil. And their common thread over a period of 10 years in undercover work, 10 years, 70 plus missions, the common thread with the traffickers and the perpetrators was arrogance, greed, and lust. It was common among all of them. And guess what?
What?
Paul Hutchinson 10 years ago was filled with arrogance, greed, and lust. Right? Now, I wasn't doing anything illegal. I wasn't hurting children. I was rescuing children. However, the truth is I was having big parties at my house. I had a bunch of NBA players and half-dressed girls, and I was on my second marriage, headed for a divorce. It was toxic. And I had lost my connection with God. I had lost that essence. And doing the undercover missions, it was adding to the problem. Because now I had the best panty dropper story on the planet, right? And it was toxic. And I got and we'll talk about this later in the solution part of our conversation, but I'm just laying that story up front because there were some things that happened that completely changed me. And the rescue missions afterwards were very much in tune with God, with a higher power. I'm writing a book called Are You Listening with My Hand on My Heart? Not Are You Listening with My Hand on My Ear? Are you listening with my hand on my heart? And I believe that every person is born with the ability to feel and recognize the spirit of truth. Unfortunately, by choices we make in our life, we separate ourselves. We have too much noise going on with all the chatter, and we separate ourselves from that spirit, and we're not able to hear it. And when you tune back into it, then at that point, the entire world opens up for you. And an example of one of my last missions in tuning in, I was in Ecuador, and we had taken down, we took down 6 separate trafficking rings. That some of the top federal agents in Ecuador had contacted me. We went back in, and I remember we went into. He said, look, there's this little girl. They found her in Peru. She was being trafficked out of Ecuador, and then she was transferred into Peru. She had to make $1,000 a day, otherwise she would get beat up. Well, one time she got beat up to the point where she was in the hospital. My wife went in and had a chance to talk to her. We were able to identify some of the rings that were trafficking her and followed them back into Ecuador, et cetera. And so we went in, and the federal agent said, okay, we're gonna take you. We want to see if there's still trafficking. This little girl was being trafficked out of this area in downtown Quito in Ecuador. And so they dropped us off, and we're literally downtown, this huge area. And at this point, I was really tuning in to the ability to listen. And there's this big courtyard. And we're standing there in the middle of the courtyard, and I'm looking around. I've got some of my operators with me, and I'm seeing, okay, prostitute, drug dealer. And it was a dangerous area of town. And then I look down this alley, and I see this girl, and she's leaning back against the wall with her foot up against the wall. It was a prostitute down there, and immediately I could feel it. I knew there was something there. And I walked down there, and I walked up to her and started a conversation. Sure enough, she led us exactly to where these guys were trafficking children. There's these 2 wooden doors. They opened them up, and there were some children that were there. I said, yeah, that's what my boss wants. I geotagged the location, make sure. And then we make it back to the van where the federal agents were. And I told him literally within 5 minutes, we were able to find where the children were being sold. Well, then he takes us, he says, okay, we have to follow up on another lead. There's it was a hair salon that did nails and had massages, and it was a front for child trafficking in the massage place. And so we drove through the city. All of a sudden we get to this area, and the federal agent, he goes, oh crap. I said, what? He says, they shut it down. He said, we got the lead about a month ago. There's nothing here. The salon and everything was here, and it's gone. They've completely, it's gone. And I could feel it. I said, no, stop. He goes, stop. He goes, there's no reason to stop. I goes, no, stop. I can feel it. Because at this point, when you're really starting to tune in, then, I think that God looks down at what we're doing in business, whatever hey, you adults deal with that. He sees what's happening with these children. He says, no way. If I've got good people willing to do something, I'm going to pave the way. And I've seen more miracles in that 10 years than every other part of my life combined. And so he stops the van, and I get out, and, Petter jumps out. He's a former Green Beret, and Jeremy and Jimmy jump out. They were operators with us as well. And we get out, and I go to the back of the van, and I'm just listening. And looking at this closed down storefront in front of me. And there's a restaurant. There's a couple restaurants there, but there was a restaurant on one side, and I felt super strong. I need to go in there. I walked into the restaurant. I go up to the manager, and I tell him, hey, there's supposed to be a salon here. There's a massage place in the back somewhere. I said, do you know where that is? He goes, where they went? He goes, do you have an appointment? Freaking knew that place was still there. I said, no, I don't. He goes, oh, I don't want to talk about it. I'm okay. Now I know what's going on here. So I walk out front and I'm walking. There's people walking every direction. I'm just listening, just feeling. There was this lady that was walking with her dog. And I went right up to her and I said, hey, excuse me. I said, I wonder if you can help me. Now, undercover, you have to lie a little bit. I said, I have an appointment with a massage place here, but I can't find it. Where is it? She goes, you have an appointment? Yeah. And she looks me up and down. Now, I'm in my undercover outfit. I've got a hat that says effers upside down. I've got a big, huge, silver chain. I have a shirt that has a picture of a drawn doctor on it with a stethoscope, and it says, I'm no gynecologist, but I'll take a look. I look the part, right? This lady, she looks me up and down. She goes, yeah. So she makes a phone call, and a few minutes later, this madam comes and opens these 2 steel doors into this courtyard area. And we follow her down this sidewalk and up these stairs and around through some other buildings, this total maze. And she takes us into this place where they're selling the kids. There's a foyer in the middle. There is rooms all around the outside where they have massage tables and queen size beds in each one of them. And then she opens up a menu with the pictures of these kids and what each thing costs and what they look like and everything else. And we that whole operation got taken down in less than a week. We geotagged the location. Our team went in. I mean, it's heavy. It's dark. These 24 children were rescued on that one and brought back with their families. So the principle there that I was teaching is that you can use that ability to feel and recognize that spirit in guiding you in every area of your life. So anyway, sometimes I just talk. You got to lead the conversation. Tell me where you want to go.
Good. You've done 70 in 15 countries. How do you plan them? That goes a lot of planning to pull that off. And you're still alive to tell us about it. Thank God.
Yeah. A lot of it, we have some really good connections with, when we go into a country, we don't just go in like a bunch of Rambos. We had connections with the federal police, the president of that country, and we sit down with them and say, listen, we will do the work. We will pay for everything. We will give you all the credit. Your country's going to think you're heroes because we're going to get arrested at the end and nobody will know we were here. All we ask is that the bad guys stay in jail for good. They're not getting around your system. And number 2, we have full access to the kids and getting them rehabilitated and back to their families. And so, then what we do is we'll usually open up a map and identify of their city and say, okay, where is the most dangerous place? We did this with the federal agents in downtown Mexico City. We says, where's the most dangerous place in Mexico City? So we circle that area. Okay, now what's the most dangerous time of day to be there? What's the highest homicide rate? What's the kidnapping rates and whatever in that area? And so that's where we go. They'll drop us off at 10 p.m. in the red zone, and we'll walk the streets connecting with the guys that are selling cocaine, building relationships with them until we identify who in that area is selling children. And then from there, we work our way up until we have to have them trust us enough to take us where they're keeping the kids so we can geotag that location or get them to bring the kids to where we were. Now, here's what's important, which, I know we're halfway through this, so I want to talk about the solution. After 10 years of undercover work, I came to an understanding that all we were doing is fighting fire with fire. And unfortunately, when you're doing that, when there's already a fire, then something already got burned. And in this case, it's the children,
California.
right? I say California right now with the fires, exactly. But when it comes to the child trafficking, I found myself every mission wishing that I had a time machine, that I could go back 5 years, 10 years before that child was ever trafficked. and pull them out of hell. But then I realized if I did that, then it would have just created a vacuum, just like what we were doing now. We'd pull 20 kids out of hell. And if not enough was being done to fix the demand, then 20 more children were being sucked back into the deepest recesses of hell to fill that demand. And so I thought, okay, where is this demand coming from? That's what we need to fix. That's what we need to solve for. If we're going to solve this equation, we don't solve it by just pulling kids out of hell. We solve it by fixing the demand for something so hideous. And I came to an understanding that every one of the traffickers and the almost every one of the perpetrators and the traffickers both were victims themselves at some time in their life. Now, this does not make their actions okay. The majority of people who were abused as children, the majority of them grow up to be protectors, right? They grow up to follow that still small voice of truth, to follow those guiding principles that were taught to us so many years ago, and live a life of integrity, ensuring that innocence is never harmed on their watch. However, 1 out of every 3, men especially, 1 out of every 3 who were abused sexually as children, if not given the love, the healing, the help, the tools that they need, become contact offenders. Physically, verbally, sexually abusing children. And so here's what we have to do. We can't just sit back and say, okay, if you were abused as a child, then all of a sudden, we need to put you away because you don't hurt a child. No, because the majority of us are protectors. A lot of my undercover operators were abused as children themselves and grew up to just say, you know what, I'm going to put my life on the line to ensure that children are protected. So what we have to do is we all, if you imagine links in a chain, right? The very last link of this chain is something that we never want anybody. There's the links right there. So how do we, if you imagine the links in the chain, and if the very end link is the abuse of a child, we need to say, okay, we never want it ever to get there. What's the link that led to that? Was it somebody addicted to child pornography? Okay, what's the link that led to that? Was it an addiction to pornography as a whole? People are like, oh, yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. Almost everybody who's listening has seen pornography. It doesn't mean you're going to become a pedophile. However, the very second that we take a woman from a divine feminine to an object, you start going down a dark road, right? Objectifying women, taking away from the divine intimacy and putting it into that kind of a category. That's the energy that is fueling this in every way. And so we all have to take a look and say, okay, where is the links in that chain? And maybe somebody's addictions to things like that came from some childhood trauma of their own. And so we as a society, if we're going to save the children, we need to heal humanity so that the children are never in that position. And people ask, they leave the Sound of Freedom. How can I do something? How can I fix this or whatever? And like I say, the worst thing you can do is try to go undercover. I actually got a phone call, a text yesterday from a lady that said, I need your help. My friend tried to go undercover to rescue kids, and now she's been taken and she needs help. Yeah, don't do it, guys. This is not something you just go out. I'm gonna go rescue kids. The best thing you can do is go home and hug your children.
Right.
And people say, and pray. Yeah. And people say, well, how does hugging my children, how does that fix it? Well, the majority of children that are taken into trafficking, the majority of them come from runaways, a broken foster care program, and broken families. Okay. So when you've got it, there's a lot higher chance of that child going into that situation with a broken family. So here's the thing. If I could tell you one thing that you could do every day It's going to take you 2 to 5 minutes a day maximum. Okay. If you could do one thing to hold your family together. Now, here's the statistics. In the United States, the average divorce rate is over 50%. Okay. So you have a 1 in 2 chance of having a broken family in the United States. What if I could tell you could do one thing to take it from 1 in 2 to 1 in 1,152? So it's literally 1 in 1,000 chance versus 1 in 2 chance. And all you have to do is one thing every day for 2 to 5 minutes. What do you think that is?
Pray together.
Pray together. Look at the statistics, guys. I have never seen a statistic as powerful as that. Literally a 1 in 2 ratio of a divorce rate for the average person in the United States, and 1 in 1,000, 1 in 1,152 if you pray together with your family every day. Just that one thing.
Every day is the key, or not just
every day.
Sunday for an hour.
Every day, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be something special. You don't have to memorize a whole bunch of stuff. You can just say, hey, God.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Incredibly grateful. Your hand with your spouse and your family and express gratitude. That is super simple, And so, and the prayer that I started, some people say, what's this Joshua thing? Like, people, we say the name of Jesus. Guess what? Jesus wasn't his real name. I don't know if you know that. Most people don't realize that his name was Yeshua. And so if indeed the name that carries, it doesn't matter. You can call him Lord, you can call him Yeshua, you can call him Jesus, whatever, but Yeshua was the actual Hebrew name of Christ. And so I just ended it with, name of Yeshua, amen, very simple. So, but that one thing can help prevent trafficking in your own family by having that connection with God every day.
And so many people don't even talk about it. I didn't even know about it actually until your movie. I thought it happened to,
It's some other country somewhere. Here's the sad thing.
Women of ill repute that, just
the United States is the number one producer and consumer of child pornography.
In America, how can this be happening in my country?
Well, and here's what's sad, Cynthia, is you can go out in your front porch, even in a nice affluent neighborhood. You look left, you look right, there's a very high chance that one of those homes is a dangerous place for children. Now, they're not taking them into another country. Here's what's happening. You need a relationship with your children where they can very comfortably come to you and say when something's off. When they can say, hey, Mom, I don't like it when I go to this friend's house because her brother's been taking pictures of us when we're changing, and he says he's going to send him around the school if we don't do some other things with his friends. That's grooming for trafficking, right? Or we don't like this babysitter because she's showing us pornography and says that we should trust her more than you. Or I don't like it when you tell me I should hug Uncle Harry because he touches me weird and says we should have special secrets that we can't tell you about. These are all grooming behaviors, and we need relationships with our children where they can comfortably come to us and say when something's off. And I touched on this earlier in terms of the statistics. 40% of all women, and I believe the number is higher, but this is what's been reported. 40% of all women report sexual abuse at some time in their life. 1/4 of all women, that happened under the age of 18 as children. Okay. Now with men, it's a little bit less. It's 1 in 5. 20% of all men report being abused at some time in their life. 1/4 of them, it was under the age of 10 years old in their own homes. And the average age of somebody talking about being abused as a child, the average age is 52 years old. That's my age. I've raised my kids. I built my career. And if you're holding on to that negative, heavy energy for 50 plus years, it's going to come out. It's going to come out in anger issues, low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and in some cases, the verbal, physical, and sexual abuse of a child. And so it's vitally important that we heal ourselves from those toxic things that happened in our past. And everything can be healed. Things that we did or things that were done to us, all of them can be healed completely. All of them are going to require the help of God to do so, but all of them can heal completely. And I believe we have the tools to help humanity heal. Breath work, prayer, meditation, some different tools of the plants that I can talk about later as well are incredibly powerful. I had my first successful company in my early 20s. We had 50,000 people a month calling in off of our infomercial to get help with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and addictions. I sold that company for 20. Yeah. And you know, it took us 12 weeks with a personal coach and a workbook and videos to help people have real transformational change. But all of us need it. All of us have to release that, especially us men. You know, a lot of men, they hold on to it. They never say anything. You know, that thing that happened to me when I was 8 by my uncle. If I talk about that, then I'll be less of a man if people know about it. No, you won't. You were 8. That was a horrible thing that happened. And the chances of you ever passing that on go from 1 in 3 to less than 1 in 100 if you simply talk about it. Just talking about it and not holding all of that energy in, allowing it to be released in healthy ways will prevent that from being passed on to the children in your life. So I encourage everybody who's dealt with that to not hold it in and say, oh, you know, people are going to judge me. No, literally 1 in every 4 people you know had that happen as a child. And so it's important that we're able to release that so we can help humanity heal.
I think so many people don't know how to talk about it. Like, that's not something you talk about in the military for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And until The Sound of Freedom came out, you didn't even have conversations about child trafficking because it wasn't about sex. About sex. I mean, those are not polite dinner conversations, you know, but after it came out, now we can start having these conversations here online or in dinner conversations, and we can do something about it. We can help humanity heal by helping them remember who they are. And yeah, Eric's exactly right. Verbalizing it is the sound of freedom. That's what it was. You know, the most beautiful sound in my life was hearing the joy of those children during their release. But the last section of my book, Sound of Freedom, is talking about the real sound of freedom is when humanity turns back to God, releases those things that no longer serve them, and stops this generational abuse. That's what's happening. Generation after generation, a grandpa, an uncle, somebody that was, you know, one of my favorite movies is called The Shack. I don't know if you saw that, but it is absolutely beautiful, where he goes to the shack in the middle of the woods and meets God. And as part of that process, he's so upset about losing his little girl. And he's so upset about these things that happen, and this guy that hurt his daughter and his father that hurt him and all these other things. And he comes to realize that hurt people hurt other people, and healed people can heal the world. And that's what that last section of Sound of Freedom was all about, is what do we need to do to help heal humanity?
Can you tell us more about the Child Liberation Foundation and its mission?
Sure. So in the beginning, the Child Liberation Foundation was just a foundation that I put together to I'd put my own money in it, and it would fund the rescue missions. I didn't want other people to fund me going undercover, but I needed to write it off, and it was a charity. And so, it helped to fund some of the other charity groups that we worked with, and some of the undercover missions, et cetera. Today, now that I'm not doing the undercover work anymore, it continues to fund some other organizations that do have some people that are doing that work. But the primary focus is in the healing side, in the prevention side. We are helping to change laws and policies in countries around the world, programs for safe houses that are being implemented in a lot of Latin American countries, certification programs for medical personnel and police and military, et cetera, in understanding what trafficking is and how to identify it, et cetera. So we gave away almost 5,000 gifts of healing over Christmas. I dressed up like Santa Claus a whole bunch of times and went to safe houses and orphanages and places where these children were, and a lot of immigrant neighborhoods and stuff where these children were at high risk, and giving them the tools that they need to not be brought into trafficking as well. So yeah, a lot of beauty, a lot of good. People can go to childliberation.org and get involved. You can donate, $20 a month, $100 a month, look at what you're bringing in and see what you're giving back, and identify some charities that are going to make a difference. And this one definitely does.
And that goes directly to children, people. You're
Absolutely.
not all these salaries to some of the other ones that are out there. Look at how much the dollar goes to solving the problem.
Exactly.
And start at home with your prayers and giving more. I don't think people are giving enough. I know I'm not. I got to up my game.
Well, and what's beautiful is that by doing so, you're showing God that you're a good steward, that you're following that law in Malachi. You're saying, hey, you know what? Yeah. And he'll say, guess what? I like that you're doing that. You don't want to donate just so you can get rich, but guess what? It's a law that works. There's very few places in the scriptures that have a very specific law tied to a very specific blessing. And that's one. And that very specific blessing is financial abundance. So we shouldn't be shy of it. It says it very clearly there that when you give to that degree, that the windows of heaven open, and you'll receive more than you can even handle.
And meanwhile, you can be tipping your waitress, your cocktail waitress, your cook, the people who do your laundry, the people who come in your house and clean, who do services for you. They've got kids. They're trying to make a living.
Absolutely.
Generously, not just at Christmas and New Year's. I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah.
I follow people sometimes and leave extra tips. Even my own dad was always had a 20 to leave on the table when we got up, because I'd be like, need their money, and sometimes if you have nothing, just a smile to someone who maybe is just sitting on the street and isn't being ignored, just go, hi, or smile, or go. How can people contribute in every way?
There's lots of ways. Go to childliberation.org, and you can get involved in a lot of things and donate. Some people are just a one-time donation. We have some people that are what we call freedom fighters. Freedom fighters are ones who donate a specific percentage of their income from their company, and they advertise it, which is great. They say, hey, look, just so you know, X percentage of all of the home sales that we do, all of our commissions from these home sales go to fight child trafficking with Child Liberation Foundation, and we promote them on our website and vice versa. So there's a lot of good ways that people can get involved with the foundation. Or if you want to, like I say, get involved on a bigger scale, on a healing scale, you can go into the Liberating Humanity and get lots of information there on keeping your children safe, information on our healing retreats that we have there to help people from overcoming anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, and childhood trauma and ego things, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much there that you can get involved with and learn more about.
Tell us more about the how you heal.
Okay, you guys ready for this one?
Bring it on us because we want to be educated.
Okay.
Right, audience?
I'm going to start with this because we've got a God audience here. Okay. There was a study done by Johns Hopkins University. In this study, there was 850 plus participants who were all self-proclaimed atheists. Okay, not agnostic. I don't know if there's a God. Atheist, there is no God. Okay. And after one experience with what I'm going to talk about, one experience, one day, 2/3 of those 850 people, 2/3 of them said, I am no longer an atheist. There is a God. Okay. That is powerful. So now you're asking, well, what was that? What did they do within 24 hours that changed 2/3 of those self-proclaimed atheists to believers? What was it? Now, this is going to surprise most of you because if you're anywhere under 55 years old, then our entire lives, these things have been demonized. So what I'm talking about is in the late 60s, President Nixon decided he was going to classify a whole bunch of things as what we call Schedule 1 drugs. So what I'm talking about are things like they're different types of psychedelics, including psilocybin and others. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not a fan whatsoever of somebody going to a rave party and getting high on mushrooms. Okay. However, my whole life, I thought they were as dangerous as cocaine because they were Schedule 1 drugs. Here's the truth, and you can do your own research on this. Psilocybin is safer than table sugar. There has never been a case of addiction. There has never been a case of overdose. And when used with trained facilitators, there is nothing more powerful in helping somebody release childhood trauma, release anxiety and depression disorders, break free of debilitating addictions. Now, people are like, what? You're using a drug to break free of addictions? That's where the problem is. We're thinking they're classifying them as drugs. It's exactly the opposite.
Wow.
0 cases of addiction. And there are some of our retreats that we work with have over an 85% success rate in helping people, 85% in helping cocaine and heroin addicts completely break free of those addictions with no side effects and no relapses. That's powerful, right? So we're like, wow, there is something that's that effective that's out there. Why haven't I heard about it? Well, because our entire life, they've been Schedule 1 drugs. We could go to jail for just as long having, mushrooms in our pocket as we could having cocaine. Very big difference, right? And so what happened to me, and I touched on this earlier in the thing. So I got a phone call about 8 years ago. I was Paul Hutchinson, right? I had all this money, all this. I had a basketball court in my basement. I had all these parties. I was on my second marriage, headed for a divorce. I had girls all the time over. It was toxic. I had lost my way. And 2 of my operators called me, and we were blowing through operators. I was Navy SEALs, Green Berets, 300 missions in Afghanistan, 1 undercover mission seeing children sold. They were done. They're like, no, I can't deal with that trauma, right? And so I had 2 operators, Jimmy and Andy, who Jimmy had done 13 missions with me. Andy had done 22, I think, at the time. They called me on the phone together, and they said, Paul, do you trust us? I said, yeah, I trust you with my life. I literally undercover. I'm in charge of talking. You're in charge of making sure I don't die, right? They said, you need to come to this retreat. It will be the most transformational 2 days of your entire life. Now that's saying something. I've done transformational retreats. I know Tony Robbins. I was next to him walking across Coles just a couple of years ago, right? And so I've done transformational stuff. And they said, this will help. This doctor has this tool that she uses in helping people overcome anxiety and depression and PTSD and addictions, and can do so in just a couple of days. And I said, now that's BS. I says, because my company I sold in my early 20s, I know that space. I had 50,000 people a month calling in off of an infomercial to get help with anxiety and depression. I know that space. You can't just fix that in a couple of days. And then they told me what she was using. She was using psilocybin in a closed environment with a guided meditation and a trained facilitator. And they said, you need to come. I said, I don't need to heal. Everybody wants to be me. They said, now you need to heal. Your kids don't even talk to you anymore, right? I'm like, okay. So I went to this, and Cynthia, it was the pivotal point of my entire life. The most transformational experience I have ever encountered. And it was the most beautiful, horrific 6 hours of my life up to that time. Now, why I say horrific is this. The medicine took Paul Hutchinson into a state of pure empathy. I could feel in every cell of my body the pain that my children felt when I cheated on their mom. And then I could feel in every cell of my body the joy of the children that we had helped to rescue. And then it took me into this place where I could feel as if I was the spouse of the guy who was at my last party, who cheated on his wife at my party. And then I could feel the joy of the people who I made a difference. And then I could feel as if I was that employee that I spoke harshly to. And the ripple effect of every word and every action showed up as if I was those people. And it was horrible and beautiful and powerful in every way. And then the facilitator, who already knew kind of where I was, she said there was some statues of some Greek gods that were there, and I'm under the influence of the medicine at the time. You have what they call neuroplasticity, right, where your mind is very susceptible, and you can work, and a facilitator can work with your subconscious mind and reprogram some stuff in real time. So she knew that I had lost my way with my relationship with Christ. And that was one of my asks, is I wanted to get my life back in order. And so there was these statues, these beautiful Greek gods. And I said, sometimes I feel like I'm that Atlas in the middle. I'm holding the world on my shoulders, but I'm strong enough to do so. And there's Zeus and Poseidon that are watching over him. And the facilitator, in a very loving tone, she said, Paul, she said, I admire that you're looking at those Greek gods as their strengths and applying them in your life. She said, but they were just fictitious. They were just, gods of the Greeks. She said, what about your relationship with that guy? And she points at this statue of Jesus. And I said to her, I don't qualify for a relationship with him. And she said, well, why not? I said, well, years ago, when I left the church of my youth, I was told by my bishop that until I was back in that church, I didn't qualify I couldn't have the Spirit of Christ in my life. And she said, and I says, and I've done things in my life that I'm sure he's not proud of, so I don't qualify for a relationship with him. She says, do you really feel that's true? I said, well, no, I'm a good person. I help with the kids. I do a lot of charity work. She goes, why don't you work on that relationship? And I reached up above, it was up on a mantle, and I pulled the statue. I'm on psilocybin, right? So she helped me take the statue down, and I sat on a beanbag for the next 3 hours and really rebuilt that relationship with my brother, and had this beautiful conversation with this statue of Christ that was on my lap, right? And it was absolutely divine and healed me in so many ways. And so after that, it was so transformational for me. We started bringing in some of these Navy SEALs and Green Berets who were stamped with the PTSD their entire life. I started researching it, and myself and now my new wife and my daughter have all become master facilitators in the space, and have hosted and facilitated now 62 guided meditation
Wow.
plant medicine healing experiences. We started out with the Green Berets, then we moved to women who had been sexually abused as children by their uncles, by their dads, a lot of heavy energy, and literally 2 or 3 days they had more results than 20 years worth of therapy. And so we're pushing to change the laws. In fact, I've been friends with RFK for over 10 years now, and he's doing a lot coming in to take down a lot of the crap that they've been feeding us, with big pharma and keeping us sick and whatever. We can help people get off of anxiety and depression medication in less than a month, stuff that they've been on for 10 and 20 years. And so, he's going to decriminalize these things, but it's super important that once they are decriminalized, it's vital that people understand that you can't just go to a friend's house and take some mushrooms and fix your life. You need trained facilitators who understand how to use the medicine and how to help people tap into that highest and best version of themselves and open up that divine connection that may have been blocked. And so I would encourage people. I know that, especially religious folk, we're all, oh no, I don't talk to me about that. That's drugs. I would encourage you to do your own research. Listen to some of the podcasts that Jordan Peterson's a great Christian. Listen to some of his podcasts where he talks about the use of psychedelics and psilocybin in transforming your life. Listen to some of the stuff with Joe Rogan. Do some of the research on the things that Johns Hopkins University has done, because I believe that that's one of the tools that will help save millions of children if we can help traumatized adults release that trauma before it ever gets passed on.
Seems like a good strategy.
So anyway, I know that's heavy. A lot of people are like, oh, okay, I was with him until he started talking about doing drugs. But, it's very, very different.
We're opening our minds. We're learning new things. We're seeing what else is available, because change helps. Don't stay stagnant. Open your brain. Go do something.
Go on creatinghumanity.com. You can get lots of good information right there on our retreats as well. We would love to come and spend 5 days with us at one of the retreats. It will change your life.
And you have to go to South America still currently.
Yep. Because I don't want to get arrested in the US by the FDA. So
is it safe there?
It's absolutely safe. We're right now, the retreat that we're using is just outside of Medellin, Colombia. Medellin, Colombia was the most dangerous place on the planet in the late 80s and early 90s because Pablo Escobar was there. And then he was killed in the mid 90s. The Sinaloa cartel all went up to Mexico. Medellin is safer than most US cities. And it's beautiful. It's safe. The worst thing that can happen is pickpocketing, there are the murder rate is lower than Dallas and Houston and Los Angeles and Las Vegas and New York. And, it's in Denver. So it's super safe. And we're about an hour outside of there. And this beautiful, my daughter and her group bought this chocolate farm. So it's beautiful. There's like 200 cacao trees and stuff. So that's where she's running a bunch of the retreats. So super beautiful.
Sounds beautiful. So your walking orders, ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, is to watch the movie with your friends, your family. Watch it again. Watch it again. The book's going to be available. Nothing like having the book. You can see Paul. Follow him everywhere. Get more little gems, because this was just like 2 drops on the iceberg. You haven't even climbed the mountain yet. You haven't even climbed the hill, right?
That's right.
Start with yourself. Start with yourself. You can't fix someone if you're not fixed. So do what you need to do to fix yourself, because you are amazing. I am amazing. We are amazing. And we'd like to see you next time for the Cynthia Manion Show at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. And please share this out to everyone, because our mission is to get awareness out. I have to tell you, before Ken Walls introduced me to Paul, I had no idea. And I still don't have enough. This is just like the first drops of my little education as well. I'd like to close now with your nighttime prayer. Remember this one from when you were a child? Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. God's love keep me through the night. and wake me with the morning light. God bless. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. If you'll stay with us, we'll go back to the green room. Love you all. Thank you for joining us. Share this out. Open the eyes, the hearts, and the minds of everyone. Call us if you need us. We're here for you. Thank you.